For the past 2 years I have been sharing my Netflix account with a stranger who hacked it, and we recommend movies to each other. Reddit, what crazy stories do you have that deal with strangers that you will never meet, see, or talk with again? My Netflix Instant account was hacked 2 years ago, but the person left the password unchanged and used the account in secret. A little later I realized because of all the recently watched was none of my movies. Ever since then this man, woman and I have been adding things to the so the other can watch it. We put in movies and let the other rate it. The rating is like our way of saying whether we liked the movie or not. The person has never contacted me. I assume he/she has my email though, because they hacked my account. I am content going the rest of my life never seeing or talking to this person. I have this picture of them in my head. I don't want to be disappointed. You can keep your Netflix secure the same way we do, with Dashlane. Dashlane can be your one-stop shop for your digital identity by managing all of your passwords so you don't have to keep track of all of them. They also keep your personal info and financials secure, making your digital life safe. Dashlane works across all platforms including all Apple products, PCs, Android, Safari and Chrome. Dashlane also has a secure autofill feature that works for personal information and credit cards, saving you time when shopping online, a VPN to prevent prying eyes from tracking what you're doing, and so much more. My favorite feature that Dashlane offers is complex password generation. It's always hard for me to make and remember complex passwords, but Dashlane makes it so easy to be secure. Go to dashlane.com Updoot to get Dashlane for free on your first device. Whoa, I'm suddenly wanting to go to dashlane.com Updoot and use promo code Updoot to get 10% off Dashlane Premium. Once my Steam account was hijacked, I logged back in weeks after it was hacked and all of my friends had been deleted and my name was changed. I had new friends too. One of the friends started messaging me. Apparently I was hacked by some Counter-Strike players. So here I am pretending to be the guy who hacks me for at least 2 days before I drop the bomb and confront this guy that I got my account back. He instantly locks up and stops talking to me. I tried to persuade him to tell me how he got into my account, but I never got that far. However, I believe this guy eventually opened up a bit and I played a game or two of Counter-Strike with him. It's a bit strange playing with a group of guys who steal accounts. This wouldn't have happened if you had Dashlane. I met a woman named Beth after she dialed the wrong number trying to reach her nephew, who, oddly enough, had the same name as myself. We talked for quite a while, her asking questions about how my family was, how I was, etc, all while I'm thinking, who is this? They know my name, must be a friend of mom's or something. Before we realized her mistake, she even called back a week or so later to see if I'd had any success with my interview and to talk a bit more. She was hitting on you. I was running on the beach with my stepdad in Santa Cruz. I'm not a runner, but he is, and he was pushing me and encouraging me. Anyway, it was early in the morning, and one of the few other people on the beach at that time was a guy practicing his trumpet, just playing it to the waves. He sees us run by a few times, sees that I'm struggling a little, and turns toward us and starts playing the Rocky theme music. I felt like I could have run a marathon. I was so pumped. Freaking awesome. That's awesome. I wish there were people like this everywhere in life to play theme music at appropriate times. Was on a particular sharing network and some dude contacted me about stuff I had. Turns out he used to be in the local bands I had a lot of tunes from. He was happy to see someone listening to the music. Started sending me new demos of his new bands. Invited me to a show in my town. Walked in and my friends were mad that I didn't say hi. I was confused as I just walked in. Band gets on stage and turns out that the vocalist I'd been chatting with is my body double. Creepy similar. One of the girls who lives next door sings in the shower. She's really good. I can hear it in the hall upstairs, but if I'm in the bathroom, I'll do backup vocals or we'll duet. There's a good chance we'll meet. Yes, but it's been going on for about 2 months now and we haven't yet. I think what we really want to know is, how is this person's taste in movies? Amazing. I have learned about movies like Donnie Darko, 180 Degrees South, Humboldt County, Time Crimes, Dusk Till Dawn, Let the Right One In. I have recommended movies like Conan O'Brien Can't Stop, Street Thief, Red State. All of Kevin Smith that is on instant. Almost Heroes. Twin Peaks. Every day on my way to work, I see the same man in a tan Jeep Wrangler with aftermarket tiger skin seat covers stuck in traffic on the other side of the road. Depending on when I see him, I can determine how on time or late I will be to work. Seems like an interesting enough guy. I just feel bad that he has to sit in terrible traffic on that side every day while I get to zoom by in the other direction. It's been 2 years now. Kinda. I run the loop in Central Park in Nick weekend mornings and there's always a million people there. Many times you end up running the same pace next to some random stranger. I've run with people for miles at a time, just staying next to each other without acknowledging them at all. I like to say bye if I stop first though. What the frick? This guy has been next to me for the past 4 miles. 3 years ago I was on Chaparral at one afternoon killing some time in between class. I ended up talking to a girl for about 10 minutes and we both made each other laugh like crazy during that time. I had told her my first name, which is extremely unusual, and the college I went to. Sadly in the middle of the conversation the connection was lost. She had my name and school though and was able to find me on Facebook. We've been friends ever since and even send each other Christmas birthday gifts. We live thousands of miles apart and will most likely never meet though. I met my girlfriend on Chatrolled. It's funny but it's true. We lived 1,000 miles away but now I'm posting this from her place. I guess you never know what the future holds. When I was a kid I was with my friends who were sleeping over at my place. It was late night and we started prank calling around 2 AM. Pretty rude and stupid now that I think about it. It was my turn and an old lady answered. I asked if she could pick me up at the airport since I was waiting for hours while speaking in a terrible accent. Somehow the conversation went from a childish prank call to a nice long conversation about life and stuff. Turns out the lady knew we were prank calling and just needed someone to talk to. She was a lonely senior and really appreciated our call. To this day, because of the prank call I try to treat seniors as best as I can. Being lonely really sucks. Here's to hoping you maintain the fake accent for the duration of the call. I've been a pro wrestler for 12 years. I'll never forget the night of my second match. I came out of the locker room after the show and was shocked to see people wanting my autograph. I went around autographing pieces of broken tables, DVDs, show programs and other random things. Then some little kid comes up with his brothers, has a giant sign of me that he drew. It had movable arms and was so dang cool. The kid got a huge smile and asked if I could sign it. I said sure and gave a big personal signature on it. While doing so one of the brothers said, "See, I told you it was worth staying up all night to finish it." I dang near cried right then and there. I found out about Omegle from a college friend and would get bored frequently and go on for shoots and giggles. One day, at like 1 in the morning, while procrastinating the cleaning of my room and the paper, I decided to go on. I hadn't yet found out about Reddit. I met some jerks and a bunch of dirtbags. At near 3 in the morning, I was getting sort of tired of talking to weirdos, so I told myself I'd give it one more shot before actually doing things. The girl I met was from New Zealand and we hit it off instantly and talked for nearly 6 hours. Sadly, I had to go to class and leave, but we decided to be Facebook friends. That was in September of 2009. Hardly a day has gone by that we don't talk online, and a lot of the time, we talk for hours on end. She is my best friend, and I hope that when I meet her in person, if it ever happens, she doesn't turn out to be a serial murderer or something, because that would really suck a lot. The girl in the apartment under me and I leave post-it notes on each other's doors. We make comments about noise we heard from each other's apartment the night before, or to ask if the other will be attending an event in the city. We have never met. In my typing class my freshman year I left a Word doc on the desktop saying hello. The next day the person in the period after mine replied. We left each other messages in the document for the entire semester. It ended up being one of our more popular varsity football players. I was a tuba player in marching band. At games I'd see him after halftime, and he always made a point to bump fists as the team went back out. We never really hung out or anything, but knowing that a jock understood that the band geeks were really there to support the team was pretty cool. Our senior year they ended up going all the way to state semifinals. Sadly we lost, but at the end of the game he came up to me and shook my hand this time, thanking me for the cool music. I had all I needed for dinner except a potato to bake. I went to the shop and bought one large potato. As I paid, the woman in front looked back at me and said, "I like a man who only buys one potato." I was playing BF3 and me and another enemy crashed jets over the ocean. We both bailed and landed next to each other. We stared at each other for a good 10 seconds before we started for shore. After the 60-second swim, we both hit shore at the same time. We stared at each other for a while, then turned around and walked away. It was peaceful. I have had jeep derbies with various enemies spontaneously, and we never kill each other. Most fun in FPS games is coupled with the overwhelming awe experienced when two enemies refuse to kill each other. My friends and I used to go on Xbox Live together and play Red Dead Redemption. We wouldn't actually play, we would all choose the fat and short Mexican and the mule, ride into a town in a pack where other players are, and, usually, get mowed down while we laugh hysterically. One night 5 other people caught on to what we were doing and joined in. It was a beautiful moment of 12 fat Mexicans on mules slowly rolling into a town in flying V formation, getting shot down by other strangers in the game. The absurdity of that game's multiplayer allowed for these things of beauty. I enjoyed sprinting into town, usually armadillo, and immediately start running around in circles in the middle of the road. Usually, around 5 or 6 people would end up joining. I was working the phones at the store I worked in and this distinguished, but elderly British lady, the accent in your head is probably the correct one, called to ask us some question. I have no idea how we changed gears, but soon she was telling me about her husband that used to fly Spitfires in the war while she tried to keep a house outside London during the Blitz. She had all kinds of stories about the V2S coming in, bombing raids, and all kinds of stories from him about dogfighting Germans and that kind of thing. And when she was done, she thanked me politely for listening to an old woman's stories, then hung up while I just stood there with my mouth agape. Another time I was working and this older Russian guy comes in looking for a very obscure boxing book, because he was a boxing coach, a former boxing coach for the Soviet Union. He found out I used to train in boxing and soon he was giving me all kinds of tips on my fighting stance and all kinds of crazy things while he told amazing stories about old Soviet boxers. So I'm like bobbing and weaving around the store while an old Russian guy is coaching me and the manager is staring like we're both insane. And then I found him his book, he gave me a wave, and off he went. I played rock, paper, scissors with a guy at a red light once. He won. I suck at RPS. I walked into Barnes & Noble to buy a CD for my dad. A couple minutes later, a guy in a pirate costume shows up. He notes that he is disgruntled about the lack of pirate music, and we talked about sound systems on boats and stuff. Then he left. The end. I don't have a story to add, but I think you've got a good arrangement here. Just think one day this guy gal will log in and randomly see that Dance Moms was recently watched. She instantly knows that something is fishy and through their hacking skills they find your address and race over to your house to find that you've been taken hostage. Your hacker saves your life and you become best friends. The end. If this was a movie on Netflix I would watch it. Long story short, random Canadian girl emailed me, Australian, by accident. 6 years later she came to visit me in London, UK. When I was in college I had a crappy schedule one semester, a couple-hour break between classes and I lived too far to go back home. So I found a little alcove outside of my next class and read there, every MWF for a semester. The next semester rolls around and as I walk past that alcove, there is a note asking where the Reading hippie has gone. Whip out a pen, and write that they had angered the Reading hippie and so he turned his face from them. The next day, there were sacrifices in the alcove, a picture of a KFC bucket, some rocks, etc. This goes back and forth for a while. I leave notes as though I were a god. They try to appease me. Week before finals, I skip a class so I can read in the alcove. They show up, bow to me, yell hail the hippie reader, and they leave. It was freaking awesome. This story made me feel very warm inside. A couple years ago, in the heyday of chatterall, my roommate and I were bored and clicking through people. We ran this Canadian dude who was actually in a lecture hall at the time. Met all his friends around him. He met the rest of our roommates. Once the class was over, he carried us down the halls and out of the building. He got pretty far before he hit the end of the Wi-Fi signal. Met a lot of random Canadians that night. There used to be this girl at my high school of 4,000 students that I would see walking around very often, and I didn't have another way of knowing her. So one day I just came up with the first name that came to mind and said, "Hello, Megan." She looked confused for a second but simply responded, "Hello, Diego," which was not my name. And this went on. Wherever we would walk past each other, we would say hello with our fake names and keep walking like it didn't happen. And this went on for 2 years until she graduated. To this day I don't know her name. My dad had his college reunion recently. He asked me to DD for him, and since I had nothing to do, I figured, why not? Dropped him off at a hotel and went to a nearby Starbucks to do some light reading. I sat on a counter next to this girl who seemed to be grading some papers. Note, they looked like middle school essays. Found out she was a high school teacher, teaching 11th grade English. We sat there and chatted for about 4 hours, laughing, talking, just overall having one of the best conversations of my life. During our conversation, she told me she was engaged, and I had a girlfriend, so there was no awkward intentions unspoken. It was just two people having a good conversation. I left without asking for a number, knowing fully well that we'd never see one another again. I told her I greatly appreciated her company, and she said that she thoroughly enjoyed it. Possibly in an alternate universe, we were best friends. When I'm really bored, I go to my local bookshop and pretend to work there, helping customers find books, recommending them new ones. When I was in high school, I smoked a bit of weed. I enjoyed smoking outside the most and found a spot at a lake by my school. It was off the trail and basically a hollowed out bush. Tons of space. My friends and I would go there for years. Then one day my friend and I were there as usual, sitting on a couple rocks. I took a huge hit when my friend said my name in a horribly panicked way. I looked up to see a man and a dog. I had never been so scared. Years of smoking and hadn't even been almost caught. I put my hand up to my mouth and blew out the smoke. As if that would help hide it, the man pulled something from his jacket. I thought it was going to be a police badge, but it was a large Ziploc bag full of weed and it also had a pipe in it. He walked over to us and sat down and his dog just stayed where it was. We handed him the pipe and he smoked with us in silence until we finished the bowl. Then he got up and left. It was so freaking weird. I still can't get over it. Maybe that man was future you and he'd always wanted to smoke with himself. When I was 4, my dad was in the Navy, so my mum and I would often go wait at the base for him to come off the sub. Sometimes for an hour or two. My dad loves walkie-talkies, CBS radios, I think it's called, etc. We've always had one in our cars. While waiting, my mum would always try and find a trucker channel to eavesdrop on, just to pass the time. One day my mum was listening to two guys' conversation and snickering while I bounced around the car bored as heck. I grabbed the mic before my mum could stop me and butted into their conversation. After a moment of silence, one of the guys replied back and I demanded to know if he knew all the planets in the solar system cause I could name them all in 10 seconds before he could even name one. I just learnt it in my new kindy class and blah blah blah. Other little kid conversation. He laughed and said he didn't know but he'd like to hear me name them all. Anyway, that started a 1.5-year friendship between me and a trucker via radio. Turned out the guy was named Larry, in his 30s and had 2 little boys at home who he didn't often see. My mum wouldn't let me give out my real name, so Larry gave me the code name Little Red Riding Hood. I'd always get so happy to hear my code name being called out on the radio by Larry. Sometimes there would be weeks of silence. He was always so interested in what I was learning at school, my new friends, my favorite cartoons and whatever else I wanted to blather on about. He told my mum he was worried he was missing out on all these conversations with his little boys and not being able to see them grow up. No mobile phones in those days, so he'd go a long time without contact with his family. I guess our conversations gave him a chance to be a dad. He gave me advice on how to deal with a bully, told me stories of the towns he'd been and sang nursery rhymes with me. We were both sad when my dad was stationed to another city and I had to move away. I sometimes wonder what happened to him. Had a film teacher who ordered films from an office in New York. He talked to the guy on the other end and got to know him pretty well. The guy told my professor about his own project, troubles filming it, what he was trying to do, financing, actors and script problems, etc. They talked right up until the guy sells the film. The guy on the other end turned out to be Spike Lee. In class we saw She's Gotta Have It and our professor knew lots of facts about how it was made. I made plans to stay at my grandmother's when I was younger. We talked on the phone for about 20 minutes before I realized I was talking to a complete stranger. So we talked a bit more, wished each other well, and then I went to call my actual grandmother. So this just happened yesterday. It's still so surreal. I was walking home from a restaurant here in my neighborhood after lunch. I had stopped at an intersection waiting for the light to change when two little boys, no more than 10 years old, rode right by me on a child-sized BMX bike, one pedaling and one standing on the back pegs. They were nowhere near hitting me, but as they went by me, the one in the seat said, "Sorry, I'm kinda drunk." The other boy clarified, "Sorry about him, he's just a little drunk." That warm Mike's Hard Lemonade that they split must have gotten them wrecked. I was on the bus going back home from work, and this guy comes on the bus from the airport. The bus requires exact change, and he didn't have any. Me feeling gracious, I pull out an extra $1.50 from my pocket and pay for the man. He thanks me, and we start talking to each other. About halfway home, he suddenly pulls out a $20 bill and gives it to me. He says it was for being so kind to him. I refused at first, but then he says he's going to file it under travel cost in his expense report. That's how much the cab would have cost. So I take it, and soon after depart. Drunk on Chatroulette with some friends and one of us was wearing a Lakers jersey. This girl we come across tells us she's from Australia and her brother is a huge Lakers fan and will be coming to her in a few weeks. We get her info and eventually send emails and start video chatting with said brother, who turns out to be an awesome dude. He says he coming to La with some of his mates and they're gonna do La for a couple weeks, then road trip across the states for a couple months. He turns out to be super cool and get along with us. We have a huge group of close friends, so he stays in La at one of my friend's apartments while his friends venture off across the US. We go to Vegas, Big Bear, parties, bars, Lakers and Dodger games, and this guy just comes along, pays his way, and fits in like he's always been part of our group. Anyways, he has come back to La twice now in the past year and a half and even came to Coachella with us this year. Social networking, it keeps us all so connected with him that when he does come to La, it's like a friend coming home from college for a few weeks. I posted an AMA about my story with cancer. Reddit raised $30,000 for me in one day. Total. Strangers. Life equals changed. I will be meeting some of them though. One day I was on Omegle in spy mode, waiting to answer a question from a stranger and talk with another about it. I was intending to just troll around and have some fun, but then there was this one question where the stranger asked something along the lines of this. I'm being bullied. I don't know what to do. What should I do to get the bullies to stop? I was bullied early in my childhood and had another serious incident only a few months earlier. So I kept it serious and started telling the poor guy what to do. He or she was probably just a kid. Anyways, I start telling them what they should do, and the other stranger says to me, "I'm gonna go elsewhere. Do you still want me to leave this chat on?" Of course, I said yes, and I kept talking to the spy stranger for minutes and minutes, as well as giving them some support. I even told them they could message me on Reddit, but I never got a message from that guy ever again. Good for you for trying, man. Kate Stranger. I was working at a Superstop gas station. 8 PM I get a text. She was from my old hometown. No idea who she was. We would text all day saying random funny stuff. Names were never brought out other than first. This girl had a 10,000 month texting habit. She would text and call me to chat about random crap. I really miss her and wish I hadn't lost my phone. Kate Stranger, if you're out there. A special thanks to Dashlane for sponsoring this video. Check out Ashlane, link in the description.